Opioid addiction is a national public health crisis that affects individuals and families regardless of their age, race, or income. The statistics are overwhelming. More than 130 people die from opioid addiction every day. But there is hope. Recovery is possible. The information contained in these podcasts is solely for informational purposes and should not replace advice from a medical provider when making healthcare decisions. This podcast contains opinionated content and may not reflect the opinions of any organization this podcast is affiliated with. We will discuss opioid use and opioid treatment, which may be triggering for some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Nothing discussed in this podcast shall constitute or should be construed as endorsement by the Independence Blue Cross Foundation or Independence Blue Cross, LLC, of any product or service discussed herein. We will discuss opioid use and opioid treatment, which may be triggering for some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. If you or someone you know is suffering from opioid addiction, please visit ibxfoundation.org/SYK. The link is in our show notes below. In Season 4, we are joined by so many inspiring guests who are sharing their stories of connectedness, the theme of this season. And today, on Someone You Know, we're joined by Stephen Knight. As part of his own journey to recovery, Stephen created Dogs Matter, a nonprofit organization that provides temporary foster care and supportive services for dogs whose owners are in substance abuse treatment, ensuring the welfare of both the dogs and their owners and facilitating their eventual reunification. On this episode, we discuss the story of friendship, connection, and fostering of his now 18-year-old dog Jade, who sparked Stephen's initial idea for Dogs Matter, how his organization uses connectedness to create a safe space for pet owners during their recovery journey, what it was like to grow up in an environment of stigma, and why Stephen does not allow it to define who he is today, and the recognition Stephen received as CNN's Hero of the Year. To learn more about this organization, visit their website, dogsmatter2.org, or visit them at Dogs Matter on social media. I'm your host, Heather Major, and this is Someone You Know. You've got fans here in Philadelphia, and I'm a big one.
Yay! I love hearing that. I'm so excited.
Now tell me again, you're in Texas, right?
I'm in Dallas. Yeah.
How's Dallas doing?
Well, today's, the weather changes every 15 minutes here, so right now it's good, but you never know. But it's been pretty good overall.
Good. If you're okay, we'll start with some things around connectedness. Just trying to get a sense from you how you would define connectedness and what it has meant to you.
Well, I mean, first of all, I love that you're saying it is about connectedness, right? I always know that the opposite of addiction is connection. And I feel that that's been kind of the key to me and going into treatment and trying to deal with my addiction is to be connected to healthy people and a tribe, that's going to take me where I need to go that I can depend on. I think as human beings, we earn for connection. And if what our addiction wants us to do is to be isolated and alone. So if you're not connected, then I think that then you're going to be at a higher risk of first of all, not having that human experience that I think we're here for. But secondly, to be able to have any kind of long-term sobriety that is going to really be meaningful, because you can be sober, but you're still don't have a meaningful life, right? You can be sober and not be emotionally sober. So I think that being emotionally sober means you have a safe place to talk to with other people. You have a place to go to, a safe space to be able to process your feelings and to be able to navigate these feelings so you can stay emotionally sober.
So I was going to ask you if you could take our listeners to that point in time when you realized that you had more to connect to than just yourself. Take us to that moment that you want to share about where you realized how important the human-animal connection was to you.
I think my moment of clarity with connectiveness is when, about 8 months being sober, I was struggling and living in a sober living apartment complex. And, but I was very lonely, and I was, the feelings are coming up. I feel like I didn't have purpose. I didn't have a lot of meaning. I was 61 years old and to start a new life, and I have decades of substance abuse, and I was sober. I was 8 months sober, but I didn't feel that I was connected. And then when I got a knock on the door one evening, and I answered it, there was a friend of mine that had relapsed, and she had this cute little dog named Jade, and she was in pretty bad shape. And she's like, I've relapsed. I got to go to treatment. She was a heroin addict. It was dangerous. She needed to get to detox. It was one of those things that it was, and I'll call it an aha moment, a spiritual awakening. But it was just something special to know, like, wow, this could be really something that I could use. I just felt like almost like a void was filled, that has been empty. So, and I had never had a 51 years old. I had never had a dog in my adult life. I was always so busy or in my addiction. I had one as a kid that was the family dog. So I didn't even know that was really a thing until I experienced that with Jade.
Do you feel like some of what you were experiencing personally, maybe we can talk pre-Jade, post-Jade, was a bit of self-imposed stigma or stigma that had been imposed upon you, whereas it's really fantastic that you were in recovery and making daily progress towards your sobriety, but you said you were a bit empty. And do you think at all that had anything to do with stigma and the fact that there's stigma to have addiction and there's stigma to be in recovery? What are your thoughts on that?
It's the stigma is probably one of the major factors and issues that I had even growing up, because I grew up in the 70s and 80s in Texas, and as a gay man, and the stigma alone for that, and the judgment that you're going to go to hell. Plus, I live in a Bible Belt. You know what I mean? So I grew up with stigma. I grew up with told that you're wrong or not being enough, and that was one of the reasons why I led myself to drugs, because I needed to numb myself from that, right? And so so that led me to a couple of things. Is that it led me to I was very successful too. I was a school teacher. I worked in a nonprofit for 25 years. I've been executive director. I was very successful. But what I was doing is I was helping others. So my life was not about me. So I wasn't good enough, but let me help you build the life that you deserve. So there's just a layer and layer and layer, where it took me to the point where, I ended up like getting arrested and having felons. Okay, there's a felony. Now I'm a felon. There's more stigma involved.
Right. The label, it is just like the labels become how people identify you.
Right.
And I guess to some extent, how you begin to identify yourself.
I did. I kind of surrender. We surrender to recovery, right? We surrender to the process. I had surrendered the other way around, and this is who I am. This is how I will die. You know what I mean? And I think that I totally lost who I was. I know deep down inside that it was there, but it was just like so much shame and guilt, and what I was putting my family through and putting everybody through, it was just kind of layered and layered, to the point where either I'm going to do something. Two things are going to happen. I was either going to prison because I did have felons and I just got arrested, or I would probably die, because I actually ended up being homeless, living out of my car. But when my mother wrote me a letter, because I didn't care about myself, and I really didn't care if I went to prison I did care I'd rather probably die than go to prison, but I still didn't want to go to rehab. I didn't care. But when my mother wrote me a letter.
Wait, Stephen, that is like very poignant. Let's just hold on that for 1 second. So you didn't want to you'd rather die than go to prison. But of those two things, you definitely don't want to go to recovery at that point in your life.
Right. Zero self-worth. I hated myself, and I didn't, I couldn't even look in the mirror at myself. And I thought, I had just made that decision. But my thought was, though, to be honest, it's like, there's a little bit of me that was like, I can't bury me. That's the ultimate for a parent to lose their child. We know that, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm a
Right.
mom. It's my biggest
Right.
fear. It's my biggest
Right.
fear
And
in
when
life.
she said that,
Me not being here for him and me having to say goodbye to him before,
yeah,
you
this is,
know.
that's not the way it's supposed to be, and
Yeah.
and nobody needs to go through that. My mom is the most important person in my life. She was my best friend. She's my advocate. She loved me unconditionally, unlike other people, most people in my life. It was conditional. Well, this you got to be this, you know, and but the bottom line is that, you know, doing it for her, not for me. There again, that life of like, let me please you, not me. I will go ahead and go into treatment and see what I can do. You know, so that's kind of led me to the recovery.
But that's strong. That's another strong connection in your journey that really helped you get to the next step, right? A step that you have just clearly articulated, that when you were accepting of who you thought you were, there was still a little sliver that you were unwilling to accept.
It was enough at the time. It's what I needed, right? It just takes that one experience to connect and to be able to feel that and feel that love, you know, and that bond that's between a mother and a son. And to know that's the only thing I had left, that I would lose that too, and not just lose it, but put my mom through what she didn't need to go through. It's just like, yeah, it's
incredibly
poignant.
Profound.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very profound. And for me, as someone who, you know, is only as familiar as the information that you've been so generous to share about yourself and Dogs Matter on social, and obviously for being a CNN hero, it makes what you've been able to achieve and the greater connection that you've made that much more poignant. So, you know, let's talk a little bit about Dogs Matter.
I mean, it's crazy, but it's kind of like that one act of kindness can change the world, you know, and that one act of kindness can create a legacy. And that's exactly what I did. But this time I did it when the act of kindness wasn't necessarily because I could have taken her to the shelter. The act of kindness was for me for the first time. I'm going to be kind to myself and allow myself to experience this connection that I have with Jade, and to be able to feel like I deserve it, you know, and you know, because I got to take care of her, but what she was giving me was just so much love and so much, you know, structure, responsibility, that I started, you know, that was my focus and that was my purpose.
Yeah, the discipline of having of taking care of a pet, whether it's you're fostering a pet, whether you have your own pet, whether you're helping someone else in the interim. I mean, that discipline is a lot, but it's also often, you know, more beneficial to the person who is taking care of that pet, an animal.
And I had a reason. And at the same time, I'm still. I mean, she's helping me, but I'm still having to like build my own self-worth and my own, you know, 'cause I'm doing it for her. But at the same time, but there's moments where it was still, when it was difficult, right? And I was triggered, as we get triggered in recovery, and something happened, and you know, I would get in my head or whatever else and get triggered. But I will promise you, what I would do is I would look Jade in the eyes, and we had this communication. It would be almost like looking at me like, oh, don't you even think about it. What are you gonna do? Leave me here for days?
Right.
Go out and be selfish, and you know, or go out because you know there's something I know. You know, it's like, it's not that it's just, there's, you know, addiction's strong.
Oh, very, yeah.
And sometimes you can't even do it. But she was strong. That bond was stronger. That bond was stronger than addiction.
Yeah. That connection and that bond was obviously stronger. This is incredible, because if you were to look back, Stephen, and think months before, or even obviously years before, as your addiction was really taking a greater hold on your life and, you know, your future, if someone would have told you that a dog was going to change everything for you, would you have believed them?
No, I would have got one when I was like 20 years old. Right? I would have got one when I was 18 as soon as I could. I would, you know, no. And not only it happens, but it's happening now because I have a program where I'm seeing the data of my clients that I'm working with now that are literally, we people that can have that bond and keep that dog in their life and get it, get reunited when they get healthier again. Um, they're staying sober.
We haven't gotten to the drill down yet on Dogs Matter.
Right.
So I know Jade is a huge part of Dogs Matter, but Jade alone wouldn't have been able to think about, develop, implement, operationalize what it is you have today.
Yeah. So I think I feel it didn't take me long to think about, because there again, I'm sitting there before her thinking, what am I going to do with my life? So it didn't take me really long. It was like the aha moment also of like, because I've always worked in social services and helping people and everything. So I knew that I would still do that, but now I could do it in a way where it's not because I need that, because I'm not good enough. It's because I want to do it and I have purpose, right? And so I thought, so it came pretty immediately like, wow, how many times does this happen that a person needs to have a place for their pet while they want to change their life and go get healthy again? And so my first thought was like, let me go do some research. I'd love to volunteer at a place, that does this, and I called around the rescues and places and there was nothing. I didn't, and I was like, then I started thinking, uh-oh, because like
the universe is telling you something, right?
Exactly. It's just like, I felt it. And
to be fair, Texas has, tremendous animal welfare programs and all sorts of programs. So you're not in a place that even locally or across your state that if something existed, it would likely be, within the borders of where you are. So Stephen, if you could just give us from your perspective, tell us what Dogs Matter is.
So Dogs Matter, we are a temporary foster program. Our services are free for people that need to go into drug and alcohol rehab and have no place to put their dog. What we do is we take their dog and they sign a temporary foster contract, and then they go to treatment, and at the end, they get healthy again. We reunite them, and we actually stay with them after that for 12 months at the aftercare program, and we have recovery coaches. I'm a substance abuse counselor, and we're there for the first 12 months of this journey to sobriety. We provide, counseling. We provide pet deposits, medical, everything they need to make it an easier pathway for 12 months and gain some long-term sobriety. You're not in the, it's not the last thing, but I mean, the thought about it is like, I would have loved to have found a place and maybe, go volunteer and maybe work there, because I know what it's like to start a nonprofit, I've worked in it my whole career, so I knew it was going to be a lot of work, but I did, I just got real passionate about it. And I would tell people, I was like, what are you guys thinking? They're like, oh my God. And a lot of people go like, you never thought about it unless it's happened to you, which it happened to my friend in my circumstance. But like, that makes so much sense. How many times does that happen? And the answer is quite a bit, so I really took the time to think about it. At the same time, I'm working on myself. I'm actually decided to go back to school to become a substance abuse counselor.
Well, I've seen some of the videos of reunifying people who have had to temporarily foster their animal so that they could go seek treatment, and it's amazing just to be able to see that, because I don't know that that's shared a whole lot. People leaving treatment as a whole and healthy human who's on that wellness journey for life, but then you add in this wonderful moment.
It went from the first few months we did maybe 15 to 20 dogs max
in a month, in the first month,
in the first year.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
You were being reasonable. You were being you're pacing it out. You're right. Okay.
Pacing it out, kind of going slow, and the word was just getting out and everything. To the point where 10 years later, we'll be hitting 2,000 dogs this year and their owners. Yeah.
My goodness. And is it only Texas? Is it beyond Texas? Is it? How does it all work?
It's right now. It's just Texas. There was a time where I like year 3 or 4, we did a little bit in California because we had somebody that moved there that wanted to help, and we did a little bit, but we got overwhelmed because it was such a huge need. I couldn't do both. Um, but however, so that's just Texas, right? And that's mainly in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We will serve the whole state, which is Texas is big as a country.
Right.
But that, I mean, most of that, probably 80% of that, is just in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
It's amazing. Do you find, well, let me ask you this. How do you think you've affected social stigma from just that work alone? Let's talk about CNN Heroes in a moment, but just getting the word out, just being a resource, just being someone who is willing to put themselves out there, take a chance on yourself, double down on the community that you are a part of, helping others. Like, were you even thinking about stigma at that point, or how this was going to help with stigma at that point? Or were you just saying, listen, this is working and we want to do more of what's working?
No, I feel it, like as Dogs Matter was growing, I was growing too as a person, and what I ended up doing is having to make that decision is, am I going to allow stigma? Am I going to allow society to place these labels on me? Because I'm still a felon. I'm still an addict. I'm still all these things, right? I mean, it doesn't define me, but that's what I thought it was. It did. I allowed it to define me for most of my life. But now it was more like, no, you know what I can do? I've been given a second. Isn't life about second chances? And if I know my word isn't much as an addict. We do a lot of manipulation. We do a lot of lying. I knew I just had to be me and discover myself and let that speak for itself. But I did know this.
Yes, absolutely. We talk about that a lot in our in the work that we do here at the Independence Blue Cross Foundation, that it's really easy to get hung up on the 1 out of 10 things that, maybe isn't going great, or something someone said. You forget about the 9 out of 10 things that are amazing.
Yeah.
And it's human nature, particularly if you have felt challenged by labels and identities and the opinions of others. The stigma, really, the social stigma, it's all coming from places in society that, and to what degree do we internalize that, and to what degree do we say it's going to exist and I'm going to be able to exist with it, right? And I'm not just going to exist, I'm going to thrive. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about the significance of the CNN Heroes Award?
Oh man, it's it's life-changing. It's kind of surreal at the same time. But what's so amazing about it is that instead of like almost downplaying or feeling like, oh my gosh, this, they must have made a mistake or I don't deserve this. It's like, I took it and I ran. I'm like, okay, you know what? There's a time when they first came to me and a friend of mine nominated me, and which I didn't know. And then when they get me this letter, it's like, I thought to myself, it's like, okay, I want to take this moment and I want to take this opportunity and I want to hold on to it and I want to tell myself I deserve this.
I think it would have deterred you in the beginning. I don't know that would have been, based on what you've shared. I don't know that would have been something that was automatic to your way of thinking, right? About maybe a bit deterrent of like, oh, I don't want awards. I don't want that kind of recognition for this. No. It runs counter to what you were trying to actually achieve.
Yeah. So the more I put myself out there and built up my own self-worth and being true to myself, the more support came out, the more like people came and surrendered me.
Your connection went, like, you started to connect to communities
everywhere, like globally,
right?
Like globally. We're talking.
Everywhere.
I've been on BBC.
We're
incredible. Talking. So there's no boundaries. And it's the one thing that I love about my story and about you can take away the stigma, me being a drug addict and all those things that people still, and being gay. people are always going to judge me and try to like bring me down, man. But what overrides that is the way I just how I handle things for myself, and took this program and took this message that the bond between an animal and a human is life changing, it's healing, and it's profound, and it's actually it's part of the humans as spiritual beings having human experiences is what is needed.
I really think your courage is helping people connect in with you and with their own selves and their own, especially people who are experiencing addiction, or maybe whose recovery, has been really tough, because it's already tough, but maybe it's been really tough and it hasn't been as linear, or they haven't seen the kind of progress that they had hoped in themselves. I really think that your courage is, helping them stay connected to themselves and to what matters most, and their own authenticity, that you're not going to allow a disease to define you. You're not going to allow who you are to be anything less than your best. I mean, that's really incredible stuff.
Yeah. I think that, one thing that needs to be said is also, it's not an easy journey, right? And as much as like there's so many great things happen, it's even the work begins when we get the dog back. The work begins when we had that reunion. But to see somebody, I mean, a real recent story that, well, it's about a year old now, but about a year, this time last year, I got a email from this woman that found this other person living in a tent with 2 dogs, and she wouldn't give up her dog. She had already had to give up her child. And so that's the one thing that she had that she wouldn't give up. And it was during the winter, it was getting really bad here. And she was getting sick, and that all she wanted to do was get help, but she had nowhere to place her dogs. So we literally went to this woman, to the tent. We got these dogs. She went to the hospital immediately and had pneumonia and almost died. But in the nick of time, she got there. And then she went to rehab. And then she just started getting healthy, and we had both the dogs, and she just got us, there again, she was probably a week or two of probably dying. And to be able to take her dogs and see her just be so appreciative, like, oh my God, I'm going to get my dogs back, or I'm going to get my dogs back. Absolutely. We're going to send you videos and pictures, and, and it kept her motivated. And not only did she succeed, but it just kind of like with me, that she really, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. She experienced that. And not only, so a year later, she has her own apartment, has both her dogs still, and she just got custody of her 12-year-old son again.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah. And to be a part of that journey is just everything. You can't put a price on that. I can get all the awards I want to, but that's my award, to see somebody get their life back, and their kids back, and the dog and their family again. And she went from living in a tent, just strung out, to that. And the key in the knowing that those dogs would end up probably going to the shelter if she would have died, and they would have come and got her. And then with the shelters in Texas, they're always overcrowded. Capacity is like 150%. So those dogs probably would have been euthanized.
I'm gonna take something you said in the beginning of our conversation. The opposite of addiction is connection. And it's an incredible story. What is next for Stephen Knight? While a pinnacle may have been the Heroes Award from CNN, it's not the finish line. So what's next? Or it's not even a mile marker. What's next?
it's the beginning.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the beginning. It's like okay, you're being recognized. So now, and because now there's the world opened up to a lot of opportunities. So what's next is we are trying to get a facility. Okay, and it's going to be a state of the art where you can have a human side and an animal side, and to bring them together like a one-stop center. And you can come in. It's going to be social services. and putting pets inclusive with pets. And you can come in if you're domestic violence. My program will always be Dogs Matter, fostering recovery about addiction. But eventually it'll open up to being able to come in with your pet and be assessed, the human part of it with the professionals there, and have the pet go to this side of it and be assessed in what its needs are, and be able to have that dog be, right now we're mobile.
That's incredible.
And I want that to be the model program. So I want to work on that here. And then eventually that's the model program that I want to put in every major city or even rural areas, that this needs to be a new way to look at social services.
It's fantastic. I mean, you're changing the way the system works, but you're changing in a way that's going to be able to work better and work for more people. And at the same time, you were talking about this, and I think it's a really important point that you bring up, that if pets can help connect us and heal us, they are then becoming they could become a deterrent to then seeking out that first step, being able to take that first step, because, no matter where you are in your, journey in life, if you have that kind of connection with your animal, your pet, of course, mine is, a fantastic dog, and you're not going to want to separate. You're not going to want to separate. And there might be a million other reasons you're telling yourself you can't separate, but I think when it comes down to it, right, Stephen, the same thing that you felt when you looked into Jade's eyes and said, Jade and I have a bond and a connection, and I'm going to see this through for myself, for Jade, for my friend, for my communities. It's the same thing that could prevent someone. And in the future, that place looks like a place with more robust services, with more robust opportunities, and it would be amazing to see it everywhere, because, addiction does not discriminate.
No, it doesn't.
And, and whether it's a person or their family or their friends, it affects us all.
It affects us all. And we can't forget about the pets. So the formalizing it, like if you're going to go get services, or you need to go to rehab, start asking the question, do you have pets? Are they safe? Because a lot of times it's like, oh, I got to go in there, and all of a sudden, oh, I have to leave because what about my pet? So we've got to have that conversation about, talk about, when you say family and kids, include the pet. And sometimes we don't, we need to be more focused on, because there's an easier pathway, right, to be able to get everybody safe quickly, instead of having to be so bad that you end up in a tent somewhere. It's just you and your dog. Go and ask for help. You're not going to lose your dog. Right now, they're
going to call Stephen Knight and Dogs Matter.
well, and one of the things, fingers crossed, the winner before me last year was the street vet. I don't know if you saw that. And he and I are meeting, and we're talking about how we can partnership, with because he goes to Skid Row, and he goes to places, and, with the homeless camps. And we're going to start asking them, one of the reasons why are you still homeless is because, you can't take your dog if you need to go to treatment, or you need to go to do something or whatever else. And we're gonna partnership and see if we can save more lives by going down and seeing these people that want to change, but that they don't have that. You can't walk into social services with your dog and be like, I'm sorry, no dogs.
Hey, the outreach is important too, even if this is just you have such a fascinating story, Stephen, yourself and how Dogs Matter came about. But I'm just thinking, you're doing things in almost an inverted way of, most times when we think about addiction and you think about trying to support someone to making steps into recovery and to support them through recovery, you're thinking about outreach first. But someone outreached to you first as sort of the beginning of where you really started to lean into your authentic self, and then the idea for Dogs Matter came, and then you could have left it. You didn't have to take the idea and actually implement it, but you did. But that was outreach from someone else. And now you're saying, great, I can do that. And now I have a really effective way to do outreach sort of in the more conventional sense. So it's really fascinating to me, all that you've been able to do, but also how you've been able to think differently about what is it going to take, right? If we're
Yeah.
really going to come up with things that solve for addiction and help support people in recovery, which is a lifelong process.
Yeah.
But it's possible, right? Recovery is definitely possible. You're sitting here today because of it, and
It's never too late. I'm one of those.
never too late.
I got sober at 51, and a lot of people counted me out. You know what I mean? And I just applied for an AARP grant because I'm like, there's benefits now. So it's never, and I know, and I have friends and that are my age and older that have given up, and I'm seeing they're just slowly dying, and I want to be able to go. It's never too late. I'm almost 14 years sober. I still have Jade with me. She's going to be 18 this year.
Stop. Oh, how beautiful. Oh my God. That's amazing.
And she's really healthy, and she goes with me everywhere. She travels with me. I also work as a substance abuse counselor in a rehab and outpatient program, and she's the therapy dog. And so she's
love it.
Just that thing. She's been able to help so many people. But when I look, when I look at her all the time, it's like, we have our moment, just her and I sometimes, because we can be taking a lot of directions. But the best moment of my day is when we end the day and I get to be with Jade and I get to look at her and be reminded is that, it started with her and that one decision and that one connection of going, this is what I needed. I wasn't connected. I was kind of dying from the lack of connection, because that's what addiction does to you. And I get reminded of being able to do it.
It's so fantastic. Stephen, I feel so fortunate to be able to talk with you today as someone who's admired you from the distance that digital and social media creates, which feels close sometimes, but it's been an absolute thrill for me personally and professionally to be able to talk with you today, and just to be able to, really understand you and the great work that you're doing and the connections that you're making. It is going to last long beyond, this conversation. So I'm thrilled, and I appreciate you so much for who you are and what you're doing.
I really appreciate it. Like I said, I love the opportunity to share my story. If I can reach to one person that to help them get some help, or even get the idea of wanting to do this, is what it's all about right now.
I hope we drive a lot of traffic to your website and to your social channels. If people want to learn more about your story and Dogs Matter, tell us where they can go to find more information.
Definitely go to our website, which is dogsmatter2.org. And you also can follow us on social media, on Instagram under Dogs Matter, Facebook, and we are also even on TikTok and LinkedIn. So if you want to see some amazing reunion videos and see what we do, follow us on social media. You'll be hooked.
This is beautiful. Your story is amazing. The work that you do is incredible. And again, I just can't thank you enough for allowing us to help amplify who you are, what you're all about, the connections that you have, and the connections that you're going to make. And hopefully we can be part of you making more connections.
Yeah. No, and maybe we come back in a couple of years and we'll tell you about the new opening of our facility.
Oh, that would be amazing. You'll have to keep us posted on that. Yeah. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. If you or someone you know is suffering from opioid addiction, please visit ibxfoundation.org/SYK. The link is in our show notes below.